Hi, I'm Anna Marie Cox, and I fucking hate people.
Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner, and I wish I had your faith in people, Anna.
Welcome to Space the Nation, where we look at science fiction through the lens of
community resilience
and collective strain. Today we'll be talking about Sam Esmail's Leave the World Behind, which is on Netflix. In the next few weeks, we'll be talking about Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, which is not based on anything, Dan. It's just a thing.
Which is
it's
good.
That he did.
He does do that, or on occasion, and I'm looking forward to this, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you're surprised it's not based on something.
Right.
It has the look and feel of something based on something.
It was supposed to be, I believe, I think the original thought was that he might be doing something Star Warsy. So, but then he decided to do this on his own. And you know what?
It looks good, but so many things do look good. And then wind up disappointing. We will be celebrating 2024 and the start of our 5th year together by doing a podcast going back to our origins, or actually pre-origins.
Yes, although when we counted the 5 years of doing it, we are including our years of.
No, I was saying the thing we're going to talk about is from before we actually started doing the podcast.
That is true.
Text we will be looking at.
That we're mining, as it were.
That we're mining is not actually something we've talked about before.
No.
Let's see if people can figure that one out.
Yeah, exactly. We're just going to be really fucking cryptic today, listeners. You know.
But speaking of asking questions that people might have about things, Dan, we're going to do a patrons-only episode. Just because.
Yep.
Just because we feel like our patrons deserve it as a little gift, like a winter solstice gift.
We're getting close enough to 250 patrons that I think we're just going to start setting up, now potentially a poll to figure out what they want us to do. We're going to do, a patrons only episode on a topic chosen by the patrons. Again,
well that's coming, but we're going to do a patrons only episode first.
That's correct. You're right. I forgot. We are doing a patrons only episode first. We've already chosen that. Yes.
Yes. So we're going to do one that's just a little gift, not necessarily for the 250. Probably,
that's correct.
Unless many people sign up, like right now, before we get to 250, and it'll be an Ask Us Anything sort of mailbag episode, and also we'll be able to get to stuff that we haven't gotten to already.
Which means if you want to ask us stuff, this is your chance to become a patron, which is ridiculously easy. All you have to do is go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/spacethenation. Join up, little as $3 a month. You get early access to the podcast. You get access to our monthly AUAs. You get access to our freaking awesome Discord channel, which really is just a delightful group of individuals. They have fantasy football and everything. There's a Dresner Cup.
There's a Dresner Cup. Right now in our fantasy league, we're competing for the Dresner Cup. Yeah. I am not competing for the Dresner Cup for 2 reasons. Number one, the QB I drafted was Joe Burrow.
I'm so sorry, Anna.
And I didn't really figure out although George Kittle is my tight end. I didn't really figure out tight ends. Like, they kind of suck. Like, it's not a
hey,
like fantasy league wise.
You're bringing the Swifties down on us now. This is fantastic, Anna. I am so happy. Like
I didn't really figure out like how to play. I don't know. And also just for reasons that I'm too sentimental, I wind up drafting a lot of players on the same team.
You know what? That's poor risk management, which is...
It is. My dad is probably like, he would not, he's not proud of me for not spreading my risk around.
would advise you to do something different, is all I'm saying.
That is true. All right. Yes, that is getting us to the topic of our actual episode. Oh, which, by the way, another reason to join the patronage is because if you are listening to this and you are not a patron, you know that we have ads for people that aren't patrons. If you're a patron, you get an ad-free episode. Also, you get a video version of our show. So you can see me gesturing right now.
In her black turtleneck.
In my black turtleneck. And my severe hair. Because it hasn't been washed.
In my fittingly enough Coastal Elite t-shirt, which is I'm wearing this in honor of what we're about to discuss.
But Dan, before we get started, how are you?
I'm doing well, Anna. It's the end of the semester. I am not quite, but almost done with grading. And I get pretty grumpy when I grade, so I'm looking forward to not being grumpy would be the way to put it. but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. How are you, Anna?
Well, Dan, I'm doing okay. I had a little experience this morning that I thought might amuse you.
Do tell, and our Anna.
So I'll share.
Just sit back and listen. Yes, go ahead.
So I, this morning, just decided, kind of on the spur of the moment, you know what? I'll try the dating apps again. I think I've shared with you, I've had a couple experiences, not so good.
Yeah.
Someone told me Hinge is good. So I said, all right.
I've heard indirectly very good things, I guess.
Right. So I decided to get on Hinge. So I make my profile, and immediately, it comes up with matches for me to look at, and perhaps not people responding to me, right? Like, this is just me. It's coming up with matches
telling you, hey, these are the people you might be interested in.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like shocked because there's like some really cool, hot, like physically fit men who are interested in a woman over 50, which is always one of my fears, that like, because I have to put the slider, I'm sure that there are some people that are going to cut off at 50, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like super excited. I message a couple of them, and then like something is like, this is a little weird. This is like, it's almost too good to be true.
It's too good to be true. Yeah.
And so I go back and look at my profile, and maybe my age is wrong. Maybe, something was wrong, which is that I had identified, I had put down that I was a gay man. This is an innocent mistake on my part. I was not trying to game the system.
You're not trying to run a scam here, Anna. I mean, like,
trying to run a scam. My pictures very clearly indicate that I'm not a gay man. But it totally makes sense because, Dan, when I've shared with you some profile pictures from straight men.
Oh, we're just the worst. Yeah.
They're the worst. So gay men are good at apps, basically.
Right. No, gay men realize background matters. Lighting matters.
Lighting matters.
Yeah.
Being clever matters. Like some wordplay, some like obscure references, and because straight men just tend to put their profile picture as a selfie in the car. I don't know why that is. I don't know. I've sent you, like, I probably have a dozen different ones, and I've probably seen 100.
You have lamented about this. You are not the only single woman I know that has lamented about this.
What is it with the selfie in the car, Dan?
Anna,
what is going on? I own a car. Is that like a brag? Like,
late stage capitalism, Anna. It's a little.
I own a car. Yeah. I don't know. Are they doing it like on their work break? Do they have a significant other? They can't do it in the house? Like, what is anyway? So the really horrible thing is I did message these people.
Oh no, Anna.
With what I think are suitably clever, messages. I haven't heard back from any of them. I am hopeful that it'll be a delightful misunderstanding. Perhaps I'll gain a brunch date.
That would be lovely. One can
hope.
All I can say, Anna, is that you are a beautiful gay man. And so, I'm sure that, you will
not. I just knew it was too good to be true. And I also want to say, it's sure enough, when I went back and changed the proper demographic, results are much less promising.
I'm sorry.
Immediately car selfies. Immediately. And then a couple that were okay. Like I've started a couple conversations. Like, I don't know. My New Year's resolution is to not be such a hermit.
Good. This is a good resolution to have.
I want to be more in my community, like get to know my neighbors, meet
neighbors
some people.
Are actually this is somewhat against what we're going to be talking about, but I am a big fan of, the street I live on. We have gotten to really know our neighbors quite well during the pandemic. And
that's actually, I think that's perfectly in keeping with what we're going to talk about, which is leave the world behind. We probably should actually get to this. This is a kind of stealth entry into, so stealth that you forgot we were doing it.
I did, honestly, yes.
Stealth entry into Obama or Obummer.
Yep.
Because he produced, he and Michelle.
Yes, the two of them. Don't knock Michelle. Michelle's a part of this. Yeah.
Right. Produced this. And that's one of the reasons we're doing it. The other reasons are that people really, really seem to think that we would want to talk about it. They're not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the Discord was intrigued by it, and seemed appropriate. We were going to do Poor Things. Anna did not want to watch it. I partially blame the Alamo Drafthouse, which is where she would have.
It's true. Like I don't like the Alamo Drafthouse. I'm just weird.
We were going to watch this anyway, so I am happy to talk about this. And admittedly, it's probably the first time we've done. I think we've done 2 Obama or Obummers within a month, but we've got to catch up.
No, we've never done like a series like right in a row like this, but I think we both really love the idea of this series.
Yes, we do. Just to be clear, we're doing Obama or Bummer based on the premise that while both of us like Barack Obama as a general human being, and I think he was a pretty good president, his sci-fi tastes have not always gelled with what we consider good sci-fi and what, let's say, true sci-fi enthusiasts would consider good sci-fi. So this is sort of sci-fi adjacent, I think it's safe to say, and seemed appropriate to discuss. And this raises the question of, will this podcast ruin it for you? In other words, is what we are talking about sufficiently good and sufficiently intriguing such that listening to our podcast would actually ruin the experience for you if you have not watched this before? And I think it's not exactly that we're split on this. I think the way I would put it is, if you are interested in watching this film, watch the film first, unaided by our commentary, and then come back. You know what? When our DVD of this season of Space the Nation comes out, you can pop it on your DVD player and, listen to a hard copy of it.
You won't have to worry about streaming it.
You won't have to worry about streaming it. It'll go really well. You could
conceivably watch it in a bunker.
There we go. We're just putting that out there. The point is that I do think it would be worth watching the film first.
If you want to see it.
Yes, but
if someone didn't want to see it, I wouldn't try to convince them to see it. Put it that way.
You don't want it on you to say, oh, you should see this movie, and then they don't enjoy it, because you think that many people would not enjoy it necessarily.
I will say, I mean, we're going to obviously do sort of final judgments later. It is gorgeous, and it is well done. It is like a well-crafted movie.
We talk about craft a lot, and there's craft in this film. There's a lot of it.
Yeah,
people care about some stuff. Okay, previous experience, which would sound odd since the movie just came out on Netflix, but it is based on a novel by Rumaan Alam. Anna, what is your previous experience?
Novel got rave reviews. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of another like Obama thing. Right? You tend to hear from him about books you've already heard about, I would say. He's not picking obscure stuff, and he's picking very well reviewed stuff too. And this got reviews in kind of all the highbrow places. And I picked it up and I read the first chapter, and part of it was I immediately didn't like the characters and just didn't feel like pushing through. Didn't want to spend time with them.
Anna, I have a question for you. Do you think Obama is the kind of guy who actually reads the New York Times Book Review and reads reviews, or do you think there is a staffer who does that for him? Okay, so
I think he's a review reader. I think
he's a review reader as well. Yeah.
Well, because he loves briefings. And also, I imagine he's a little like me, which is not necessarily a personality trait that I'm proud of, which is that I read a ton more reviews than I do actual books.
I don't think that's a bad trait. I think that's entirely
well, I know a lot. Like, I have opinions about books I haven't read.
Yeah.
And I have sort of general knowledge of a bunch of stuff,
Let me put it this way: you've also described 99% of all DC wonks.
Yeah.
In that, one of the things true. I remember once when I was doing Blogging Heads with Heather Hurlburt.
Oh, Blogging Heads! Wow.
I know.
Takes me back.
Deep cut. But we actually had a fun time talking about Game of Thrones at one point because Heather had never watched it, and I challenged her. All right, Heather, as a DC wonk, can you talk about Game of Thrones without ever having seen an episode? And she produced a 90-second effortless monologue that made it very clear that she could actually bullshit something if necessary. And it's a good skill. I don't mean this in a way to knock Heather. I
thought you were going to go with, rather than describing wonks, describing academics.
It works for both. It also works. It works for both.
Like journalists, because we have to become instant experts on so much. Like,
of course,
expert loosely defined.
Right. Well, as a journalist, what you have to do is learn enough to know more than 99% of the population,
which is shockingly easy.
Necessarily an expert, right? Like it's pretty easy to get more than 99%.
Yeah. All right, but your previous experience, Dan, what is your?
So I did not read the book, but my wife, Erica, did read the book. She read it all the way through, and she kept talking to me about it. I remember it. I don't think she was thrilled with it, but it did stick with her, because I do remember her describing it to me. And for that, she had to suffer through watching this film with me asking her, "Was this in the book?" every 5 minutes, basically. And so
you're one
Erica,
of them.
I'm sorry. I apologize. She wasn't crazy about the book, but the premise did intrigue her.
What did she think of the movie?
She, I think, liked it sort of. We had a debate about it afterwards. I think she liked it better than I did, because I had, and we'll talk about this. I had particularly problems with the sort of premise of it and the sort of first act. And she thought, no, this is how people would actually behave. And in some ways, it's our backgrounds, which is I'm someone
the therapist
versus the wonk, as it were. And so,
right.
All right, so let's get to the story behind the story. On it, this is an Obama or a bummer episode. So can you please tell us, how did Barack Obama and Sam Esmail meet?
The meeting part's a good question. I wish I actually knew that, because Sam Esmail is not someone maybe that I'd immediately tag as like a friend of Obama, a foe. Do we call them that? That would actually be really funny if we called them a foo. A foo.
A foo. A nemesis? I don't know.
A foo. He's, of course, the creator of Mr. Robot, which highly stylized, great performances, has that in common, which is a through line in his work. He also did, and you mentioned the name of it,
Homecoming with Julia Roberts. So,
which is based on a podcast. I don't know if you know that, but
I did know that.
So we have hopes of perhaps this podcast being optioned for a film starring Julia Roberts.
There's going to be a DVD. I
guess Julia would play me.
Yeah. If Ethan Hawke played me, I'm winning in that. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Professor.
Professor
who doesn't sleep with his students. So there you go. Yep. Ironic T-shirts. Really? It's matching up well. Yep. So I don't know if I would have paired them right away, but the Netflix competed in a bidding war for option for this book. The book was immediately someone's going to make a movie out of this.
Well, the book came out like in May of 2020. It came out just when the pandemic was in full bloom.
Right.
It was just perfect timing. Yeah.
Right. This could have been set during the pandemic pretty easily.
Yeah.
I almost wish there would have been an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Yeah.
And then after Netflix acquired it, his production company, which he owns with Michelle, it's their production company, became the producer. It is the first feature film that they have produced, first piece of fiction. They've done documentaries before, but this is the first piece of fiction they've done.
Congratulations to the Obamas.
Sure, and it's a great debut. I mean, I think both of us had our problems with it, but I look forward to what else they're going to do. I'm sure it's all going to be kind of interesting.
It also, believe it or not, I don't think this is going to affect the popularity of it. Like if we pan it, it's like the #1 movie on Netflix as we are talking about it. So yeah, I'm
going to go for story behind the story, from most interesting to least interesting kind of tidbits. I think for our discussion, the most interesting thing is Obama gave feedback on the script.
Yeah, notes. Okay.
In particular, the IR stuff. And Sam Esmail wrote it and then gave it to Obama. We'll probably talk through this too, which is one of the big differences from the book, is that it's much more specific about what is happening in the world. And Esmail, that's what he made up, right? Alam didn't have very much specifics, and Esmail put in specifics. And he said in an interview, "I am writing what I think is fiction for the most part. I'm trying to keep it true to life as possible, but I'm exaggerating and dramatizing." That's how you say that word. Yes.
That is how you say that word.
And to hear an ex-president say, "You're off by a few details," I thought I was off by a lot. The fact that he said that scared the fuck out of me. So there's that. And I guess it didn't seem that far-fetched. I'm sure you're going to tell me. But like parts of it are very... Yeah. Within the bounds of science fiction it's barely science fiction. Let's put that. Yes. So, and then also more interestingly to me, he had lots of notes about the characters and the empathy we would have for them.
I believe, as the kids say, whelp.
I have to say he is a big movie lover, and he wasn't just giving notes about the thing that were from his background. He was giving notes as a fan of the book, and he wanted to see a really good film. And that is interesting to me, in part first this next section, which is Rumaan Alam's background. He is a child of Bangladeshi parents who immigrated before he was born. He grew up in the suburbs of DC and went to Oberlin. And I point these things out mainly because, as he has said, he was very assimilated as a kid. He basically hardly ever felt left out, didn't feel like his race was a factor very much. His parents were very assimilationist. Assimilationist. I said that correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
He could have been a character in a Jhumpa Lahiri novel, although he's Bangladeshi rather than Indian. So, yeah.
And he grew up and went to work in New York publishing, was fairly successful as an editor there. And in fact, at one point, he's at a Condé Nast cocktail party and in this beautiful home, townhouse in Carroll Gardens, and he's sipping a cocktail and he thinks to himself, I'm a young nobody, but here I am in this beautiful mansion and I worked at this magazine and I feel like I belong here. And
Oh no.
Yeah, this is you might have a dramatic sting here of music.
Very clashing music right now. So we would come. And
his boss's mother comes to him and mistakes him for a driver.
Oh, God.
So his awareness of his racial identity started to sort of really blossom actually in the professional sphere, like not so much growing up. And he would say he actually developed a real gift for writing about wealthy white people, particularly women.
Okay.
A great quote. My work is autobiographical, but no one can see it, which is a great line. Asked about the changes that were made in the script, he said, I think it's a tricky balance for Sam. When I watch the movie, I see a work that is aiming to leave its audience the same way my book left its readers, but the conventions of the form are just different.
He's absolutely correct about that. That's actually a really open-minded position.
Sure. The two feel intertwined to me, and adaptation feels faithful to what I was trying to accomplish. That's interesting to me. I think he's maybe being a little over generous. But he was so thrilled. Like, one of the funny things is reading his interviews, and he wrote a piece for GQ about having it made. He's such a fanboy. Like, he's so excited by it, which yes, I would be too.
I mean, if your novel was
I would let go of a lot of criticisms if it was going to mean, like, he is gay, and he mentions he had a huge crush on Ethan Hawke growing up. So it was real, like, for him, meeting Ethan Hawke was actually...
You got to meet
It was very exciting to meet Julia Roberts. Don't get me wrong. Don't get him wrong. But meeting Ethan Hawke was better or more fulfilling in some way. He and his family, his husband, their 2 adopted kids... We're actually in the movie in the beach scene.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
And he had a delightful time doing that. He's told one story that I thought was funny. His kids were not impressed. They did enjoy meeting who they called Julia.
Oh, okay.
And then Julia's husband, Ethan. Didn't kind of click that, they just assumed it. I think one of them's a tween and the other one's younger than that.
Wow. Okay.
So
all right.
They're mostly on their phones. And then all I'll say further is filming began in April 2022. This was pretty quickly made in a home designed by the Up Studio. You can Google it. Movie shows it off exactly how it is. They did build an almost complete replica of like one side of it also in a studio. And it was filmed in Katona, New York. And there are a bunch of Mr. Robot Easter eggs, and as Mel has said, it takes place in the same universe. The big one that I noticed is Joey Badass plays a character in Mr. Robot, and a really excellent Joey Badass song is the opening credits music.
Okay.
But there's a book in it that is also is a book from that universe.
Oh, was it Beach? Was it the Beach Towel? Was it
Beach Towel? Yeah.
Yes, that was one. It was on Julia Roberts' nightstand. Is when she woke up. Okay, that explains that. Actually, I was wondering about that. Okay. All right, let's get to Chekhov's What's It. This is the thing that often appears in Act 1 of the film that winds up being somewhat relevant in the third act. Anna, what you got?
I want to point out the absence of a Chekhov's gun.
Given the nature of the subject matter.
There's a gun that does not belong to Chekhov.
Yes. Although the gun does, to be fair, the gun does appear in the third act.
Yes, I'm saying it does not go off.
That's
so
right.
So it belongs to Sulu or Kirk or someone else.
Yes.
And then I would say that my going off item is Chekhov's Dallas Cowboys baseball cap.
Yes, is worn by Danny the Survivalist, played by Kevin Bacon. For me, it's Chekhov sleeping through a bomb. There is a great little moment, where in the very beginning where Julia Roberts' character says, "Oh, Archie, he'll sleep through a nuclear bomb or something," and
I actually think it's Clay that says that.
No, it's well, okay, could be wrong. One of them says it, and
you can correct. Sorry, I didn't mean to correct you. That was very Amanda of me.
It's very Amanda. Yeah, very, very correct. No, I think it was Amanda who said it, but the point is, it's said, and it winds up being prescient.
All right. Well, Dan, we should actually talk about the plot. It's straightforward, but we have so much to say, as people can already tell. Please, Act 1.
All right, let's start with Act 1. Meet the people haters. Punk rock t-shirt wearing, type B personality professor Clay Sanford wakes up in Brooklyn to find his misanthropic type A personality wife, Amanda, packing for a weekend getaway on a spur-of-the-moment family vacation. They pack up the kids, moody, screen-obsessed 16-year-old Archie and anxious, friends-obsessed 13-year-old Rose, and head to a place I'm going to call Fake Hampton. Props to Amanda, it's a sweet house with a pool and woods and magical deer. Only the Wi-Fi is spotty, so Rose can't watch the Friends finale on her iPad. They spend a mellow day in the pool and then at the beach, marred only by an oil tanker running aground very close to them.
They do take that really in stride.
Yeah, they are surprisingly unrattled by that. Yeah.
Do not link it to anything else.
You
just are kind of like, that they mentioned.
No, they do link it.
So she says, I can't find out any more about it because the internet's down.
Right.
But there's no I wonder what that could be.
Also, the way I would put it
is it connected to anything else? Oh, they also find out there have been several of them.
Yeah, because the guard says this is before. Anyway, that evening, after the kids are in bed, there is a knock on the door, and we meet an impeccably dressed Barack and Malia. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean George H. Scott, G.H., and his daughter Ruth from the city. They explain that they own the house, and a blackout in the city has made them drive to Fake Hampton. G.H. doesn't have any ID, which is a little sus, but he does have the key to the locked liquor cabinet. Amanda is super suspicious, a.k.a. super racist, but Clay agrees to let them spend the night in their own home after GH refunds them $1,000 in cash. Trying to get news on the TV about the blackout, the emergency broadcast system plays the least informative message ever. Anna, have I ever told
It's basically just, this is an emergency broadcast.
Yeah, it's like an emergency broadcast. We are suspending normal broadcasting. We're not telling you what the emergency is.
This is it's literally, it's just it's a meta emergency broadcast.
Yes. It's just generic. Yes, it's generic. It's an emergency. That's it. Anna, have I ever told you, by the way, about my trauma with the emergency broadcast system?
No.
Okay, so this is a story. I was about to
like an emergency broadcast. This is a story.
This is a story. I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was watching Sesame Street, and my parents told me that they were going out for a walk. And I'm a 5-year-old kid. I'm watching the TV. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay, go. I'm watching Sesame Street. Yeah. And then the emergency broadcast system comes on. And it scared the living shit out of me. I had never seen it before. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And then I look up and my parents are gone. And so I'm wicking out. I'm pretty sure I was crying and so on and so forth. To this day, the emergency broadcast system still always makes me feel uneasy because of that.
Okay. I have a story that just is in parallel to that.
Okay.
Which can be, it's a seasonally appropriate story, not as scarring. I remember one time my parents were going out and I was with the babysitter and my dad says to me, see you next year. And I was like, ah! Of course it was New Year's Eve.
Right, of course.
And I was like, you're leaving for a year?
Yep.
Parents, don't do that.
All right. Let's get to the first act. Anna, I was impressed with Julia Roberts' ability to play a tremendously unpleasant character, particularly in the first act.
America's not sweetheart, but another word.
But I will say that the problem with the first act of this film is that it made me stop working for it. I stopped, like, sort of filling in the blanks. The dialogue is just way too mannered. There is, like, a speech in, like, the first 2 minutes that Amanda gives that is not how people talk, is the way I would put it. And also, I do think the suspense, and you're supposed to feel some suspense, and I remember, I know this was true in the book as well, you're supposed to feel some suspense about whether or not this was really GH's house. And I think the problem I had with this is that it would have been ridiculously easy to resolve, and yet it wasn't. And so there's like 20 minutes that like just seemed like an utter waste to me. I don't know. Am I wrong about this?
I totally agree. I think Amanda points out there's no pictures of them in the house. And it's like, well, they're Airbnb-ing it. I mean, you take away your family pictures and also open up the study. And there's like, there's a bunch of like,
we see the study later
stuff, which is a little like, but still.
But, like, GH is not an idiot. He's supposed to be a very smart individual. All he had to do was say, look, let me open up the study. They would have seen the pictures. Problem resolved. And like it annoyed me.
Or at least been like, well, a black person lives here for sure. It's its own kind of racism, but yes. No, they would have that. I mean, and surely like he has like, I don't know, bearer bonds someplace, a safe, like and pictures for sure, someplace. Right?
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it was a 2-minute thing that was played out instead over 20 minutes.
Pictures on his phone of himself at the house.
Oh, that would have been good. You're right. Yeah, that's true.
Something.
And this is the problem. There were a lot of different ways that tension could have been resolved much more quickly. And again, he is a smart individual. He should have anticipated this might have been an issue. And so and he doesn't. And that was the thing.
And there's a point where they're like, oh, we didn't hear them drive up. And also they're like, oh, should we knock at the front door or the side door? So they like skulk around the house for a little while. That was dumb.
Yes, it was obviously dumb. Yes, no, again, like this, the thing is that this guy's job is supposed to be how people think. And so like that,
right.
So it was just frustrating. Yeah.
And I will say that the mannered dialogue is not great. I think apparently when Esmail and Alam sat down for the first time to talk, they talked about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the play, which has its mannered dialogue, right? And I performed a scene from that for my high school drama competitions.
Oh, okay.
I still remember a famous opening word, what a dump. What a dump. That's the first lines of the scene. Okay. Anyway, it has mannered dialogue. They could have kind of leaned into that. And in fact, the house is almost set up like a stage.
Yeah.
Right. So there could have been an artifice to it that seemed sort of intentional, but it's sort of, there's another part of the movie that seems like it's trying to be naturalistic.
Right.
Like it just doesn't, the mannered dialogue and the every other way they're playing it don't fit.
Well, there's also the way Esmail shoots it, which is like he's got these trademark shots of like looping like over, changing the angles and so on and so forth, which in and of itself at times works very well. It worked extremely well on Homecoming and it worked extremely well in other areas. And it could have worked for this, but again, it plays with the, it sort of plays with the mannered dialogue, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, and so the other things is I didn't like anyone, including like the kids. I mean, I liked Ethan Hawke because Ethan Hawke's totally like, I wish he was on Hinge. Like,
yes, I like Clay. I like Clay, and I really liked Ethan Hawke. But we'll get to the scene that I really liked that he did in a second.
Yeah, he is the only character that I liked without qualification, and I
really like GH actually. So
I like him too, but he acts like such an idiot. Like
it's a combination. Like again, it's the problem. And you know what? Let's get to the second act, and we can talk about this more. Yes.
All right.
So Act 2, from bad to worse. Amanda awakes to news alerts on her phone about the blackout and about hackers being responsible for the blackout. Rose observes a really large herd of deer checking out the property, and I mean really large. Clay drives into town to get supplies and answers, but without his GPS, he gets lost. He leaves a distressed Spanish-speaking woman by the side of the road. One of the things I did like about this is that, I assume you watch this with closed captioning. The closed captioning is not translated, which is appropriate.
But would you like to know what she said?
I did know it. Please go ahead. Yes.
Did you know? Do you speak Spanish?
I didn't know enough. Let me put it this way. I knew enough to know that she was talking about houses and that she was lost. That was about it. Yeah.
I think, if you know even a little bit, like you can kind of get the gist of it. But I did look up a translation. So
yes.
Thank God I found someone. I've been trying to get back to my home. I'm lost. I've been walking for a while. I need to use your phone. You're the first person I've seen all day. We have to get out of here. I just saw a plane that was spraying red gas in the vicinity. I saw some deer, more than 50. They were coming out of the woods. Please, I need to go home, sir. A military plane appeared and fled. There's no one around. Is this a chemical attack?
Okay, again, while we're talking about believability, I don't understand how she gets lost. This is something that I find legitimately confusing.
Well, I actually assumed that maybe her car stopped working or something, because she doesn't have a car, I think.
True. Or the car is not there. We don't, but like, I hate to say this, like, again, and maybe this is me stereotyping, I kind of assumed that she was supposed to be like don't look at me
domestic
like that.
Worker.
Yes, that's where I was going to go. She's also sort of dressed like that, I think.
Let's leave all that aside.
Yeah.
Like, I think the fact that she doesn't have a car visible does make it like, what is she doing there?
Yeah.
Here, I did think and tried to be very self-interrogating about this.
Yeah.
I would have picked her up.
Right.
I believe that I would have picked her up. I think that it is a real dark mark against Clay.
Right. And also it is Ethan Hawke's best moment acting in the entire movie. Like, again,
it's believable that he doesn't.
It's believable that he doesn't. He feels shame about it. It was like the look on his face when he drives away was, again, great acting. I'm not saying I approve of the behavior as the character, but like it was, it was.
And there are situations which I would have the same conflicted sort of feelings about it.
Yeah.
If I was in the same situation and it was a man, I don't think I would pick him up.
Yeah.
But that woman, like, she seems particularly unthreatening.
Yes. She seemed she was scared, and other than that, she clearly was not a threat. All right. Anyway, Clay then flees a drone dropping leaflets, which look like red gas. GH goes to his neighbor's house, finding it in disrepair. On the beach, he stumbles onto a crash site with bodies and plane wreckage. He barely escapes another crashing plane, leaving him soaked from the ocean water.
Okay, just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
There is an actuarial joke that's appropriate here.
Oh, okay. Because your father is an actuary.
Because, yes, Sam Cox is an actuary. And the joke goes like this. There's a couple looking for homes. Mm-hmm. And they go to one and they love it. And then a plane crashes into it, like a little biplane crashes into it. And the husband, an actuary, turns to the real estate agent and says, well, take it. And the real estate agent's like, what do you mean? Like, why would you plane just crashed into it. And the actuary says, do you know what the odds are of another plane crashing into it?
Anna, I hate to tell you that it's not just a joke. It's a scene from a film.
Oh, yeah. World According to Garp.
World According to Garp. Yeah. Okay.
But that's an actual. They probably got it from an actuary.
That's a fair point. Okay. Yeah. All right. Rose.
But to the point here.
Yeah. What are the odds of two planes crashing at the same time? Clearly something is afoot. Yes. Anyway, Rose tells Archie about the deer that she had previously seen. He is too preoccupied with creeping on Ruth in her bikini to care. By that pool, Ruth and Amanda engage in much passive-aggressive banter. Eventually, Rose persuades Archie to go into the woods and they discover a shed, and along the way, Archie is bitten by a tick. When GH returns to the house, he lies to Ruth about why his clothes are wet. Alone with Amanda, GH reveals that he was unable to use a satellite phone, theorizing that the satellites must have been damaged, and he tells her about the plane crash. A sudden shrill noise overpowers them all. Anna, I think we need to talk a little bit about Sam Esmail's choices here. Basically, how do I put this? I think there's more information that he gives to the viewer than he gives to the characters. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a choice to make. I'm just not sure I was crazy about that choice.
To go back to Alam's statement about it, I think that you kind of, because there's a thing in translating books to movies that can be helpful, right? Like we've talked about this before, which is you have to show rather than tell.
Right.
Right.
Obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
This is a very unusual circumstance where telling or not telling works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because Esmail has to show so much, like, I think, you know, for one thing, the characters are keeping things from each other.
Right.
I think one of the most repeated lines in the whole movie is, "Do you know something?" I don't know if you noticed that.
Why didn't you tell someone something? Yeah.
Why didn't you tell someone, or do you know something?
Yeah.
And I think the movie would be improved by more ambiguity, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that could have heightened the lack of reality, or in a weird, yes, would it be more realistic to know more or more realistic to know less?
It's actually more realistic to know less because, no, go ahead.
It might be more realistic to know less, but at the same time, I think if you kept it super ambiguous, because in the language of cinema, we know more, right?
Yeah.
Like, in movies, you usually know more about what's happening because that's just the way movies work. That's the way post-apocalyptic movies work. To make it more explicitly mysterious, I think, again, could have worked in that heightened artificiality way. The dialogue also might have worked better. I want to talk. Just go ahead.
No. I live it this way. One of the choices Esmail makes, and my understanding is that this is a shift in terms of the adaptation from the book, which I actually approved of, is the book doesn't just focus on these characters; it also has interstitial discussions of what's going on elsewhere. And Esmail doesn't do that. And I actually think that was the right choice to make. I actually think having it as a more claustrophobic story works well. But the problem is, if you're going to make it a more claustrophobic story, I think in some ways having less information works better in that instance, because it allows us to actually, I think, allows you to empathize more with the characters because you're just as in the dark as they are,
and would have made it a movie less like other post-apocalyptic or let's see, peri-apocalyptic. Is that?
I think during apocalyptic is the
is that peri? Is that?
I don't know.
I think so. Anyway. I just want to mention really quickly, because it has to do with the Spanish-speaking woman. I had the thought that "leave the world behind" obviously has more than one meaning, but it has a meaning in this movie, I think intentionally, that is, you've left the world behind because you've gone further. Like, you are leaving, like you've left behind people.
Yeah.
Like, I am leaving you behind. I'm going to go get to safety and leaving you behind.
Right. But what is the world? What does the world mean in this context? In some cases, it's the world you used to know, but you're implying it's also the rest of the people on the planet. So yeah.
Right. And I think that comes up later, also when they talk about America's enemies. Like, America has left the world behind in the sense that there are other countries that we no longer don't care about as much. Like, we're just soldiering forward, and don't care about who we've left behind.
Okay, it is time for our advertising break. We'll be right back after what I hope is not a very shrill noise. And we're back.
I'm just going to lean into that.
S3, the worst Tesla ad ever.
Or counterpoint, good Tesla ad. More to come.
All right. GH suggests that his contractor, Danny, who Amanda had seen in the very first part of the film wearing a Dallas Cowboys hat, loading up on water from the supermarket, could be of assistance since he's something of a survivalist. Clay returns and shows one of the leaflets dropped by the drone. Archie translates part of the Arabic to mean death to America. At this point, the Sanfords decide to drive to Amanda's sister in New Jersey. The highway, however, is jammed with all those Tesla recalls. I mean, self-driving cars crashing into each other on the highway. By the way, in terms of, like, there's a surprising amount of action in this film. That was far and away the best scene. Like, that was genuinely great. I loved it. Also legitimately scary. So that worked out.
Yeah.
They return to GH's house, and he lets them stay in the master bedroom, no less. Okay. To Ruth's surprise and irritation. Go, Anna.
A couple things. One is, we no longer call that the master bedroom.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No. I think it's just funny in this particular context.
Oh, yeah.
Now called the primary bedroom. But yes, I get kind of letting him in.
Yeah, sure. No.
Staying in the primary bedroom?
That made no sense. Nope. No, I don't get that. Like, Like this way, if I'm
even letting the kids have their own room, sure.
Which is, by the way, they wind up sleeping in the same bed with them. Like,
yeah.
It's just, it's all very weird. And again, and mostly unexplained, I think. Later that night, Archie turns in early with a fever. GH admits to Amanda that one of his wealthy clients intimated that shit was about to go down. And then they dance. Meanwhile, Ruth and Clay vape while she asks him wildly inappropriate questions until they're interrupted by a flock of flamingos in the pool. Ruth later questions her dad, GH, why he let the Sanfords back in the house. I'm not sure he has a real good answer, except he's like Obama-like. I honestly don't know.
Obama would have made him sleep in the in-laws.
Yeah, I would hope so. Like, I'm dying to know if Obama put that note in the screenplay. Just. The next morning, Rose is missing and Archie's teeth start falling out. That was legitimately creepy, by the way. Anna, I did like the dancing scene between the two Oscar winners. Mahershala Ali and Julia Roberts get a pretty good vibe going, but it raises a really awkward issue, and this is one of my fundamental problems with the film. In theory, these are supposed to be two people whose job is to read and handle other people. And based on their behavior during this entire film, I'm not sure how good they are at their jobs.
There is one good line where Amanda tells Ruth what she does for a living, which is she's a client-side manager in advertising. Yeah. And Ruth says, I wouldn't have thought that. Great. That was perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect read. Just totally deadpan. Yep. But does have me wondering the rest of the movie. Yeah. Like, are we, since you called it out, Ruth, are we going to talk about this? Like, she's terrible and she seems like a bad person. And Mahershala Ali is just so charismatic and appealing. Yeah. I kind of get that he could be doing his job. What the problem with him is that he does so many things that don't seem very smart.
Yeah, this is the problem.
It's not that he's bad with people. It's that he seems to read them badly.
Well, he
seems charming.
He's charming, but he actually, again, that very first scene where they show up unannounced, he had
and they ramble for a while.
Yeah, he had time to game out, how do I reassure these people that I am actually the owner of the house? And it was like the worst version of that.
Hi, I am sorry to bother you. Right. I own this house.
Yes, exactly.
Instead, they have this whole thing. They talk about, the Philharmonic and
it was
why they're there, and
they're clearly nervous. This is what Eric and I were actually arguing about. Erica's argument is they were nervous and they were flustered and so on and so forth. And I can kind of sort of see that, except they knew sort of what was going on. They were concealing information. To be fair, Amanda was right about that. But go ahead.
And here's where I wonder about the Obama notes. Especially, actually, I wonder if Michelle, who grew up in an entirely black family, might have different notes.
Yeah.
A black man approaching a white family in the middle of the night probably has acute awareness of what that looks like.
That is what I am trying to say, yes. And particularly, I suspect GH knew this. And that's the part that I don't quite get. On the other hand, he was, at the same time for Amanda, if a man and a woman show up at your door in an impeccably tailored tuxedo and a gorgeous dress, this is a sign that it's probably not a
with a Bentley in the background.
Yeah. Oh, was the Bentley in the back? I don't think I even noticed that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, but I'm going back to just it probably isn't something that he would even have to think about.
Right.
It would come like second nature to be like, how do I make myself not threatening? Yeah. How do I appear to be as believable and as comfort giving as possible?
I did like Ruth, and I by the way, you're right. I think the actress's name is Mahala. Her line reading was really good, and it made sense that she was more, she was much more angry, justifiably so, about it. So that was a well done character point. But both his character and Amanda's, they're supposed to be imbued with these capacities, and they are not on display for a lot of this film, and that was the problem I had with it. But that said, the dancing scene was great, and Mahershala Ali could act in anything as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he is fantastic. A couple things here. They shouldn't have let them back in the house. Yeah. They could have even not been cruel about it, because we already know there are empty vacation homes abound.
Well,
like in this neighborhood.
Yes, although it's like the suggestion of, nope, you're not welcome back in our house. Why don't you just go break into that one or something?
Well,
like
that.
What I would have done if I was GH, I don't know. Like, I would have let them back in the house. Certainly would have let them back into the primary bedroom, and then would have gamed out a longer term plan of, okay, let's go.
Which might have been, let's go see if there's some other empty houses that you can stay in.
Right, exactly.
Okay. The other thing I want to say is the Tesla scene, super creepy.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Inaccurate. Because Teslas actually aren't that good at auto driving.
Right, which is what, yes.
Notoriously at this point, not good at it. Which is probably why Tesla agreed to have them featured in the movie, because it actually attests to a feature that they're not as good at as it looks like in the movie.
Yes, but I'm not sure. Let me put it this way. Whoever thought of that as being somehow a positive for Tesla does not understand how this works. Like, I actually was talking to a friend of mine earlier about whether or not we were going to get electric cars, because she's going to have a pretty long commute going forward. And it's like, are you going to get a Tesla or like something like that? And she said, have you seen Leave the World Behind? Because I hadn't seen it yet. It's like, I'm definitely not doing that. So the point is, that film at least persuaded one person not to get a Tesla.
The other thing that's sort of interesting, or attests to how it is that the Teslas wound up in this movie labeled as Teslas, is that Elon Musk is an idiot. His response to this scene, when Netflix tweeted, and I will just say tweeted, out the scene, and he responded, Teslas can charge from solar panels even if the world goes fully Mad Max and there is no gasoline.
That's almost Linda Yaccarino-like in terms of the, like, this way. That's a weird text in general. It's even weird for Musk, though. Like, I'm surprised he didn't say LOL. Yeah.
Has nothing to do.
I know. Yep. That would explain, though, why they agreed to put the Teslas in there.
All right. Act 4.
Let's go to Act 4. I'll be there for you, even when the bombs start to fall.
I'll be there
for you when the bombs start to fall. We should have adapted the lyrics. The group divides up emergencies. GH takes Clay and Archie to Danny the survivalist contractor for meds. Danny ain't too happy about the folks showing up on his porch, but suggests that Archie is experiencing a variant of Havana syndrome. Danny also suggests that it's not just the Arabs. The Chinese, Russians, and Koreans are also probably in on the attack. Danny suggests that it's not just the Arabs. The Chinese, Russians, and North Koreans are also probably in on the attack. After a prolonged standoff, Danny helps Archie in exchange for cash and suggests they hole up in GH's neighbor's underground doomsday bunker. Meanwhile, Amanda and Ruth look for Rose by the shed and have a rather uncomfortable standoff of their own with the deer herd, during which Amanda saves Ruth.
Saves is an interesting word.
Comes to Ruth's aid, like Amanda does come to Ruth's aid. Like she
does. It's just the save from the deer. They are creepy. Okay,
the deer are really freaking creepy. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sitting in the car,
how much of a threat they pose is kind of my question.
Well, this is an interesting question. I think the deer are behind it all. I'm just going to put that out there.
Oh, there is a theory that there's an animal uprising.
Yeah. Sitting in the car in Danny's driveway for a long-ass time, GH confesses to Clay that he thinks he knows what's happening. A 3-step plan to foment regime change in the United States. Step 1, cut off communications. Step 2, launch covert attacks. And step 3, let the dysfunctional society rip itself apart. Sure enough, Amanda and Ruth see New York City being bombed by something. The film ends with Rose exploring the neighboring home and finding the doomsday bunker. While an emergency alert system reveals sort of what's happening, Rose finds the DVD of the last season of Friends and starts to watch the show finale. All right, Anna, what do you want to talk about? The ending or the geographic question of where in the fucking fuck Fake Hampton is supposed to be?
Do you want to show off your incredibly, demographically appropriate to the movie knowledge of where, it can't be?
No. Like, I've only been to the Hamptons once, so, I'm really a pro on it. No. But my point is that we are simultaneously told, I think several times, that it's a several-hour drive from the city to where they are. And yet when you see Amanda and Ruth looking at the city, it looks like 2 miles away, basically, tops. So that's the part that I can't quite reconcile. Like, I don't understand where they are. And that was, again, something that, if I was more sympathetic to the film, I probably wouldn't have noticed, but I remember like thinking this is fake Hampton.
And also kind of something that if they had gone with a higher level of artificiality, that could have been almost part of the story, that it's kind of disassociated in space.
Yeah.
What I want to say is something that matters, even if they had, no, actually, again, if they'd leaned into the artificiality, this would have been okay. People take too long to do things or to stop doing stupid things.
Yes. Oh, the number, I will say, you were talking about like common lines of dialogue throughout this film. The most common shot in this film is one of the characters staring in horror at something. Esmail cuts away, and then we eventually find out what it is they're staring at. Yeah.
They just take too long to do anything. So there is the scene, like I'm in my notes, like as GH is giving this talk about like, are we on the same page?
Yep.
To Clay, I'm like, you could talk and drive. Like, you could talk and drive, totally. Like, this conversation could be something that you do while getting away.
Why have this convo in front of Kevin Bacon? Yep.
Seems like a bad idea, because especially since there's sort of an intimation that they might need to like go up against Kevin Bacon at some point. And then also Amanda and Ruth, like the scene with Ruth. Okay, we talked about this before we start taping. You think it's perhaps accurate to have Ruth be paralyzed or at least fear. Weirded out.
Yeah, I would have been weirded out. Like, I don't know what the hell I would have done in that moment. That's fair. Yeah.
She's immobilized for a long time.
Yep.
And also she has the shack behind her. And whatever you say about deer and how scary they are, no opposable thumbs.
Correct. No, you
could not open the door to that shack.
Yep. Wait for this way. I think that's a valid point to make. Like, there's a lot of people doing a lot of stupid things in this film. That was one of the more believable but stupid things that were done.
Here's the one.
Yeah.
I don't care for children, Dan. I really didn't care for Rose. Right. I would have made finding her a higher priority than apparently Amanda did.
So, this way, I actually, believe it or not, I think I actually liked, I don't know who the actress was who played Rose, but I did like the anxiety of that character. That made sense to me. I did.
All right.
But yes, they absolutely, like, they're having an extended conversation in the shed.
with very artificial mannered dialogue.
Yeah, no. And that's true. Like, if you're asking me, like, my daughter is missing in the middle of what seems like a pretty apocalyptic moment, my top priority is going to be finding my daughter. And I'm not going to pause and say, in the Venn diagram, this is where we're in the same page or something like that.
Or explaining, like, why you are the way you are.
Yep.
And I hated the end of the movie. I mean,
I actually kind of liked it. So this might be something different. Okay, go ahead.
I liked it better when it was ambiguous. I mean, one of the things that's an interesting choice is that while Julia Roberts has been trying to say, like, oh, it's ambiguous and you have to bring your own interpretation, everyone is leaning towards it's happily ever after. Esmail's almost said point blank, like, they wind up in the bunker. And
I assumed that, well, leave this way. It's happily ever after, but it's like,
well, how happy can you be in a bunker, especially with like a 13 and 15-year-old?
Right.
Like, and see, I thought maybe I had two dark endings.
Okay.
One is that this is some kind of fantasy of Rose's.
Oh, that's kind of nice. I would have liked that.
Two, a very kind of Twilight Zone-esque one where the TV gets broken. Like,
it's the only working TV and it gets broken. And like suddenly Burgess Meredith comes out and says,
Yeah. Three, that she locks herself in.
Oh, that would have been dark. Jesus. That would have been a horrible one. Wow.
Well, one thing I'll say, I guess I was going to save this for Debris Field, but it would have fit in with one where Rose, and I thought it could be accidental or on purpose. And what an interesting statement that would be about our relationship to media, right? Like,
yeah.
Or in the insularity of it and insularity of her life, like as a tween or whatever. The scene where her brother tortures her with the idea that there's someone living in that shack spying on her.
Yeah, yeah. That was.
I mean, you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a level of cruelty that seems realistic to you? Because it's awful.
Anna, Archie is a 16-year-old boy.
Okay.
No, I mean,
Enough
that's all
said.
I'm going to say. Right. Like, I'm not saying it's a nice thing to do. It's obviously an incredibly dickish thing to do. Is it beyond the realm of plausibility? No, probably not.
All right, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of opinions about this movie already.
Sure. Yes.
But there's a particular opinion that I am curious about of yours.
Okay. Yeah.
Is there IR in it?
Anna, in my line of work, you have to understand the patterns that govern the world. Because both you and I know that there's IR in this film. Just let's have some fun here, Anna. What do you think the IR
You're gonna start me off on an easy question.
Yeah,
like we're not gonna
go. It really is not subtle. Nope. Just hit me with all the stuff.
You asked me about the IR when it's like, I don't know, Professor. I could teach this class. No, yeah, it looks like there's some IR. I mean, I am watching it. I was less curious about the fact of whether there's IR in it than what you thought of the very obvious IR in it. The part about the coalition. I mean, I know there's other kinds of IR built into the relationships, but let's go with the most literal example.
My thought was that it was a crock. I'm sorry. Like okay. I understand, or leave it this way. It was the cheapest possible shot you could have fired, which, to be fair, does exist. The idea that all of America's, enemies / adversaries / people who have resented U.S. foreign policy for the last, 40 years, and God knows there's been mistakes that have been made. I'm not going to disagree with that. The idea that somehow the Chinese, the Russians, the North Koreans, and various members of the Middle East form what is truly an axis of, evil, or an axis of evil cabal that would attack the United States, I find wildly unrealistic for a variety of reasons. The one way in which maybe it works is if you believe that the 3-part plan that GH talks about would actually play out the way he's talking about. And I guess this is where, we've talked about Rebecca Solnit's work before on the podcast. I'm not saying America's in a great place right now, but I don't think it would quite fall apart in quite the way that they're talking about. And actually, in all these things, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of a very bad Chuck Norris movie called Invasion USA. It's the same plot. And that's not a good sign, is the way I would put it.
So, do you think that Obama had more input on this part of the plot?
I guess he did. I will say this. If Esmail actually
on the relationships part of the plot.
I think he cared more about the relationships. I mean, that's what he said in the comments. But I will say this. If Esmail says that Obama didn't really correct him much on this, that is a touch disturbing, because it does suggest that there's maybe, more intelligence suggesting more coordination or potential coordination than we would like. I think part of the... Yeah.
Obama's just like, yeah, I know that part needs to be there because it's a movie.
That's what I suspect is what he thinks. I mean, you can criticize Obama's foreign policy, but he knows a fair amount about the world. And so I think he would have found this a touch unrealistic. Also, the Havana syndrome. So, what was referenced, the sort of directed energy sort of sound that you hear, and then leading to all kinds of sort of, problems in terms of symptoms, migraines, teeth falling out, what have you. Funny story about the Havana syndrome. It's not clear whether it's real. I'm going to be controversial here because there are a lot of people, and there have been, let me put it this way, the symptoms are extremely real. There have been a lot of people, foreign service officers, intelligence officers, who have suffered real symptoms, not just in Havana, but in other, U.S. embassies and consulates elsewhere in the world. Problem is that an awful lot of research has gone into trying to figure out whether it's like microwaves or some sort of sonic weapon or some sort of directed energy weapon. And the primary conclusion a lot of these studies have come up with is that this is mostly psychosomatic, which again doesn't mean the pain is not real, but
my read on that, by the way, was that Danny offers that as part of what I think is a fairly good and interesting characterization, that this guy maybe actually doesn't know quite as much as he thinks he does.
That's possible. Also, this was one of the other things, which was the meds thing.
And I thought it was much more likely to be Lyme disease.
Yeah.
or like some kind of tick-borne illness.
But a tick, I mean, that is a rapid.
Well,
that is a rapid.
The animals are rising up, and that includes ticks.
That's possible. Yes, I do think somewhat more interesting in terms of the IR is the sort of breakdowns of norms and trust, but then the simultaneously building up of norms, which again goes to this question of why GH lets them back into the house. One can argue by that point they've spent the day together, they know each other a little better. GH trusts them, and it's weird. It's weird in the end that I think GH is the most optimistic character of all of them. Because there's this conversation he has with Ruth where he says, we're going to be fine. Whereas Ruth's like, if shit hits the fan, don't forget we're black. Or we don't trust white people. Like, that's what she said.
Here's where I can believe that Obama had some script input.
By the way, the reason I'm also suspicious of the Grand Coalition thing is this basic question about interdependence, which is if you were to launch this kind of attack on the United States, the likelihood of, let's say, nuclear weapons being used in response, or some sort of shock that would hurt them just as much as it hurts the United States would be relatively high. So this is why I think that this kind of attack probably wouldn't play out like this. And then finally, I am going to go forward with my theory. I could not help thinking whenever we kept seeing the clusters of deer. Have you ever watched Talladega Nights, Anna?
No, I have not.
Okay. It's a bad movie. It's a funny movie. It's Talladega Nights. It's Will Ferrell playing Ricky Bobby, who's this race car driver. There's a post-credit scene in Talladega Nights where Will Ferrell, who plays Ricky Bobby, and John C. Reilly, who plays Cal Naughton, are playing two race car drivers doing sort of public service announcements. And one of them they do is, we like to joke around a lot on the racetrack, but we'd like to talk about something very serious right now. Packs of wild dogs running most of America's major cities. And it's just funny. And I have to admit, that was the thing I kept thinking when you see the deer, like, just sort of staring. Because I think the deer were running everything. That's all I'm going to say about this.
As I've said, among the theories that have been put forward by readers for what's happening, animal uprising and aliens are the two that we haven't really talked about.
Yep. Oh, you know what, Anna? Now that I think about it, I do have a question for you as well, because we've talked a lot about this film. Is there a critique of capitalism in this film?
Dan,
yes,
you got to read the papers deeper than page 1. And you got to read this movie against its intent, I think, to find a critique of capitalism. Which, I mean, I don't think there was one, at least not intentionally. What do you think?
So,
how well have I trained you?
Okay, so let me put it this way. The critiques of capitalism, on the one hand, are like so obvious on the surface that it is tough to miss. Clay and Amanda are not supposed to be a likable couple. They're having an affluent vacation. They are useless in a crisis. I think you're supposed to feel more sympathy for GH and for Ruth, but to tell you the truth, fundamentally, like, Ruth is not a terrifically likable character in a lot of ways. And they talk a lot about sort of living in affluence, and it's off-putting.
Yeah.
I do think that if there is a slightly deeper critique, it's supposed to be about the extent to which capitalism breeds interdependence. The oil tanker that we see, Clay admits, this was actually a decent line where Clay admits, without my cell phone, I am useless, when he's on Danny's porch. And I actually liked that line because it actually reminded me of all things of Kindred, in terms of, like, if you could go back in time, what are the things from the present that you would bring with you? And pharmaceuticals are a big deal, but, like, there's other stuff that is not as useful if you're not in a network.
Here's where I'm going to posit that critiques of consumerism are not the same as critiques of capitalism.
There we go.
And having people be unlikable is not the same as a critique of capitalism.
But I will put it ultimately,
what this movie kind of shows, no matter what it tells us, like what it shows is that rich and affluent people will be just fine.
Yes. No, I was going to say, I know why you hated the ending. Let's put it that way. Because the ending does, in fact, suggest...
It's like, rich people should build bunkers and not share them with anyone.
Yep.
And that works out, you know? And I know what you were saying about Clay and Amanda not being actually not nearly as wealthy as the Scott family. I did take the liberty of looking up vacation rentals in the Hamptons. And
for now or when? When were you looking? What this
for summer?
No. Remember, this is off
for August. For August, late August.
Season. This would have been in September or October because they say that at the very beginning. This is important. Remember, they say that like it's off season. It's just off season. I think Amanda says something like that. So I assume this was in September.
Okay, late August rental.
Yeah. Is
like $3,000 a night for something.
Yeah, because late August is the peak, Anna. Like, I grant you that.
All right, I just don't think they're getting that. It's implied that they're paying $2,000 for that house for the weekend,
which is actually a bargain given that house. But yeah, I grant you.
Unrealistic is what I would say.
I grant you, but no, it's true. We had this argument on texting each other before we recorded. Anna's point was that these are all awful rich people, and I did want to make a distinction between...
And you were like, oh, they're only awful affluent people.
Affluent people, yes. But like, there is a difference between the people renting the Airbnb and the people who own the Airbnb. That's all I'm trying to say.
True. And again, to a certain extent, if we're going to go by who's likable, that means the rich people are more likable than the strivers. What I would say was also interesting here is that class heals all wounds, you know, like... What winds up happening is that Clay, who just seems like a decent person, actually, but Amanda's discomfort with GH seems to be absolved in part because she's like, well, you know, he is rich. Like, she doesn't say that, but definitely her comfort with him starts to become more obvious as she like kind of acclimates to him actually being the owner of that home.
I think you're right, although I also think it was about him knowing things. But
knowing, specifically knowing people
or knowing rich people. That's fair. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
I think that now I'm a little bit more interested in the book than I was because I think now I'm going to forget his name because I called him Ruman. Amal?
No, that's his last name. Hold on.
Yeah, Amal.
Ruman. No, Alam. It's Ruman.
Alam.
Yeah.
So I admit I'm more interested in the book than I was having read about Alam's experience as with his racial identity. Because I think it's possible Ismail did not think about that as much as he did. Alam probably has.
Probably, yeah.
Like, obviously it's very clear that Amanda is racist, but it's just this weird clear-cut thing and not complicated by the tensions between class and race.
So yes, and that's that was one of the odder things about that first act, which is like particularly like I assume this is supposed to be like bougie white liberals living in Brooklyn. I was a little surprised that the racism was that overt, I guess would be the way to put it. Like,
I mean, there are totally racist bougie white people, but usually they voted for Obama, right?
Right.
Like
that would have been really funny. I have to admit, they should have put that line in there at some point from like Get Out. Like, I voted for Obama twice. Don't accuse me of being racist, or like, you know.
And here's my other question about Scott: are all his friends white people who are his neighbors?
I'm gonna say
probably. Like in real life.
Yeah.
You know,
in real life, he's probably navigated. He is navigating the white corridors of power and wealth. That's
sure. I bet he has some friends though that he might want to warn.
Yeah.
Like that who aren't running in the same circles that he is.
In other words, why aren't they coming, you know, to the well?
Or why doesn't he even try? Like he's worried about his wife. Totally get that. They go directly home. He doesn't talk about anyone else.
Well, also, like, even if he was talking about someone else, like the phones are down at this point. So
that's what I'm saying. But like friends who he may care about, who may not also have like all of the access and all of the, you know, stuff that he has. Like I would worry.
Yeah.
Like I have friends who would get left behind should some shit go down. They wouldn't have a place to go. I would worry about them. I wanted to say, I think Colson Whitehead is smarter and more interesting about these tensions.
To be fair,
than this movie. Again, I haven't read the actual book, so.
Oh, now I want to read Sag Harbor by him. That's true.
Because do you remember the story that about almost this exact same situation, which was that his father worked in finance. I can't remember exactly what, and they had a house in the Hamptons.
Yeah.
And people used to assume or would assume that he had at least one anecdote where they assumed he was a African prince.
I believe yes. I was told that. Yeah. The fact is,
so now
Colson Whitehead, right? The fact is, Colson Whitehead is usually smarter about just about anything. So
Yeah. Well, we both have crushes on Colson Whitehead.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Dan, actually, speaking of crushes, kind of media crush that other people have, Obama or Obama. This is where we need to talk about why we think Obama liked this.
Yep.
And then what we think of it using the almond scale, 1 to 7 almonds.
So, I think Obama liked it because, how would I put this? Obama liked it because this is about all the people that he went on vacation with in Martha's Vineyard. That this is all the main characters are, I'm sure, people he has interacted with or interacted with those archetypes multiple times. So I can see
Janet Yellen is one of the neighbors.
Don't pick on Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen is adorable. She would have behaved much better. But
Greenspan.
Jamie Dimon would be the better.
Jamie Dimon, you're right.
Yeah, Jamie Dimon.
Greenspan is only kind of a holdover, right?
Yeah. But in the end, the more we talk about this film, the fewer almonds I want to give for it. I think I'm only going to give 3 almonds.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think it's no bummer too. I mean, I think this movie could have been written by Obama on some level. Like, it is a post-racial, post-apocalyptic movie. Like, and I can see its appeal. I'm dying to know what Michelle thinks about it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
She is someone whose opinions I am generally more curious about Michelle's opinions than I am about Obama's.
That's not always true. If you look this way, I do want to give Michelle one of GH's signature cocktails and see if she opens them.
I would be curious about her take on this movie. I would also now just put a plug in. If anyone in the Obama orbit is listening to this podcast, let's do a Michelle book list.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I like that.
I think I am definitely more interested in what she's reading than I am in, Obama's book list is what were the best reviewed books in the Times? Anyway,
this is our
his
second
music
Obama
lists are more interesting. I think his music lists are more interesting than his book lists.
All I'm going to say is this is our second Obama and Obama, in a month. We're going to have to take a little break, and then we will have to revisit, refresh.
Right.
Okay.
And on the almond scale, I am going to also give it 3 almonds.
Yep. Oh no, it's the directed energy weapon. No.
My teeth are falling out.
It's Discordant Notes. This is where we take a question from one of our patrons and try to answer it in the podcast. So Doug O asks, who bombed New York City and why? I don't have a great answer to this because my initial guess was that it would have been a U.S. military plane. Remember, within the context of the film, the idea is that it's supposed to be a civil war now, so it wouldn't surprise me if it was a U.S. plane that did it. Because the question then becomes, if it's not a U.S. plane, where did the aircraft come from? You would need an aircraft carrier to get the planes there, which means it's only the Chinese or the Russians. Those are the
President of Texas, Ted Cruz, ordered it.
Well, in some ways, this is really the prequel to the Alex Garland film Civil War on it.
Right.
But the other thing is that what's interesting is that a lot of people, Doug in his question said, who dropped the bomb on New York City, implying that it was a nuke. And I don't think it was a nuke. Or if it was, Esmail rendered it very badly. Maybe it's a dirty bomb, but if it's a dirty bomb, then it's not the United States. So it just raises a whole bunch of weird questions.
2 things. First thing I Googled was, do nuclear bombs always make mushroom clouds? Because it's not a stereotypical mushroom cloud. And also whether or not it's supposed to be a nuclear bomb. And I think it's supposed to be.
So at the very end, you see the emergency broadcast system suggesting radiological stuff going on.
Dirty bomb. I'm with you on dirty bomb.
Yeah.
And maybe a combination of like a high explosive, like a pretty explosive bomb, and then
it also could have been actually this would be the most,
or it could have been something falling.
Yeah, no, the most believable scenario could have been someone planted a dirty bomb in the city. We just heard the fighter jets flying to do recon, and there's shots. That actually is the most plausible scenario.
That's actually what I kind of thought, is that those planes were like,
we're not dropping a bomb, they were just observing. Yeah, that actually makes more sense.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Oh, speaking of dirty bombs, it's my Geiger counter. It's the debris field, Dan.
Yep.
This is what we go through, what we haven't already gotten a chance to go through. We've had a lot to say about this movie, but I still have stuff to add. What about you?
God. I have a few things. Why don't you go first, though?
There are great lines.
Yeah.
A few of them that I liked. I don't care that she farted. I care that she lied about it. Oh, which I have written in my notes next to that. IR ?
You gotta have some cooperation in the back seat. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Yep.
And also, I think they call it a Hamlet. That's how cute it is. Those are good. Oh, a couple others. I care. I do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it, but I care. Which is a great white person line in general. But then, like, I didn't mark down all the mannered stuff because that would have taken a while.
Oh God.
But one that I really hated was at one point, someone, I think it's Scott, says something is afoot. No one
says that.
No one says that.
No one says that unless they're on a Broadway stage.
Or Sherlock Holmes.
The one piece of mannered dialogue that I like is when I think at one point Ruth turns to Amanda and says, "This is the part of the Venn diagram where we overlap."
Yeah,
I did like that. That was good. So, I was amused by some of the stereotyping involved in the. One of the things I did like, the tropes that we keep hearing is like, Clay says at one point I read in the Atlantic. People are talking about what they've heard on NPR. That was a classic sort of, Eric and I joke about this, that like, when she's going out, like, does she have her New Yorker tote bag wrapped up in her New York Times handbag, which is then in the NPR thing? So like, I just found that amusing. I like the Jenga. The Jenga was that was actually, by this movie's standards, relatively subtle, and I actually used that metaphor once in a foreign affairs piece about eroding American structures of power. So I did like that.
My question is, would you and Erica play Jenga?
We have never played Jenga, but I would be happy to. No, we would do.
Okay, yeah. What would you play? Let's do a game. What would you play? You're at your Airbnb. TV's broken. You apparently have no DVDs of your own. They're all been bought up by your neighbor.
Do we have guests? Like, this is an important question.
No, your kids have gone to bed. It's just the two of you.
Ooh, I don't know. We might try to find like a Wordle thing that we could do, or like a.
No computers. No computers.
Right. Then we would probably do Jenga, or we could do Trivial Pursuit. What about you?
So not being partnered, but let's do in my theoretical, like if someone I was dating who I liked enough to go to an Airbnb.
A really gorgeous gay man and you were like trapped on.
Yeah, just friends. We're just decide to go to the Hamptons together. Yeah. We're gonna be each other's wing person.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hope that we both are good enough at Scrabble to play a competitive game of Scrabble.
We would do Scrabble or Boggle.
Like
Boggle,
without making each other mad. Same with Boggle. Dan, I'm gonna just put this out there here. When I have dated men in the past.
I'm so scared about how this sentence ends. Keep going.
I shy away from playing Boggle or Scrabble with them.
Why?
Learned the hard way.
Oh.
What? Because
you beat them and they don't react well?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Even if they react well, it's just like...
Fun fact about Scrabble.
Not fun for me.
No, this is interesting. I actually do like playing Scrabble with my wife, or Boggle, not because I win, but because my wife is not competitive in the slightest, unless she is playing me in Scrabble. And then, like, the super competitive side of her comes on.
But you're a competitive person.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So Did things go well? Are you evenly matched?
Oh, in Scrabble and Boggle? Yeah, I think so. I think she might even be better than me in some of those. I'm better
My
than her.
My first husband grandmother was a competitive Scrabble player.
Ooh.
And so he is incredibly good. Probably, I'm sure he's even better. But he used to beat me all the time, but I learned a lot from playing him. I know all the 2-letter words.
Oh, that's a good skill.
Which are pro tip to everybody out there. Want to get good at Scrabble? It's not like reading the dictionary. It's learning obscure 2 and 3-letter words and words that don't require any vowels. That is how you become good at Scrabble. All right. More from me as the characterization stuff. Julia Roberts, Amanda, uses nonplussed incorrectly, which I thought was funny.
Thank you. That was bugging the shit out of me.
But I'm sure it's intentional that she uses it incorrectly.
But it had to be intentional. You're right. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's good. I did laugh at the, that Rose brings up the West Wing and, and Amanda says, "You watch the West Wing?" And she says, "Only the Aaron Sorkin seasons." I thought that was...
Well, those are it's true. Like, I'm not a huge Aaron Sorkin fan, but those are the best seasons.
Yeah.
I identify one cool thing, characterization that I completely identify with is that Julia Roberts stays in her pajamas all day long. She just throws on a cardigan over it. Been there. Also, I did like the picture changing, although that was in the category of they should have leaned into the artificiality.
The picture changing?
In their living room.
Oh, yeah. The only other thing, again, just this tiny little note of dialogue that I did think was funny was when Danny says, "Well, I guess we're going down to barter now." And Clay says, "I gave you cash. It's not barter." He's right. Yeah. Point for Clay. Just saying that.
Speaking of Danny, there's a point at which, before we meet him, that GH refers to him and he says, a lot of the more thoughtful parts, things in the house were recommended by our contractor.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, for sure this has to come back that Danny designed the house. It does not come back.
Also, it was worth noting, like we were talking about class, like Danny is doing well enough as a contractor to be able to live in fake Hampton. So good for Danny. Like, a good contractor is hard to find. That's all I'm saying.
I kind of was like, I was okay with that. Contractors are hard to find and contractors do well for themselves.
And good for him.
Last thing for me is there is, when we find out that Rose has gone to the neighbors and making herself at home, she has a pile of junk food in front of her that a normal person could not amass in the amount of time that she's been gone. It is comical. And also, why? They haven't run out of food.
Anna, that's why they were staring for so long at things. That they needed to build up the amount of time so that Rose could gather. I could just see Esme like, no, she's got to stare at the deer for another 3 minutes. Otherwise, we're not gonna. It's not gonna be believable that she got.
Make any sense that she has this much food? Also, this is a weird thing, but she takes a huge swig out of a jug, and it's clearly a juice jug, but the liquid is clear. I guess it could be white grapefruit juice.
I have no idea.
But also, that doesn't match because she's got a huge amount of junk food, and then she's like, "I'll just have some. I'll wash it down with juice." Yep. Like, I don't know. I mean, juice is mostly sugar. But part of me is like, is this an eating disorder being implied here? Because this is a lot.
No, I don't.
A lot of food.
It's an abrupt thing where oh, right, food is going to be scarce. And that's the only time.
But it hasn't been scarce yet.
That's correct. Yes, that's fair.
All right. I think that we have actually
beaten this
finally said everything we want to say about this movie.
Yep.
Which I will say, I guess, still saying things. It provokes conversation,
which would make Barack Obama happy. Anna, I think that.
Oh shit! I walked right into that. Just right.
Congratulations, Anna. You've been Obama'd.
That's what we call being Obama'd. Some kind of sound effect. So we usually plug our pluggables here. We have gone kind of long, so I'll keep mine short, which is I have a website. It is, as Dan likes to say, AnnaMarieCox.com, spelled the same, for some reason pronounced differently, AnnaMarieCox. I am hosting a New Year's Eve writing session for, looking back, looking forward. It'll be from 4 to 6 in the afternoon for people that don't necessarily like to stay out late on New Year's Eve, and that is Central Time. And I'm doing it as a fundraiser for Texas Equal Access, which is an abortion fund, something that's been in the news of late here. It is a fund to get people out of Texas in order to receive the reproductive care that they need. I think officially it is not for receiving terminations of pregnancies. It's just for general reproductive care. But anyway, if you can just send me a screenshot of a donation of any amount, then I will give you the information for how to register. You can do that via Instagram, or you can email my lovely assistant, Jess, at jbriggs@AnnaMarieCox.com.
We are both on Blue Sky. I am at Dan Dresner. She is at Anna Marie Cox. I have a Substack called Dresner's World. I am also on Threads. I have nothing else coming out, but I am looking forward to the new year.
Yes. And also, I will say Dan signed and co-wrote a letter to Substack's owners about the unpleasantness that
not a fan of
the Nazis.
Not really a fan of that. Yeah, just would rather they don't do it.
So here's hoping there's some resolution to that. And Happy New Year, everybody. And until next time,
keep this channel open.